A soaked 13-year-old boy showed up out of nowhere at a biker clubhouse door. He didn't ask for money or food. He asked a question that left grown men speechless. Will you be my backup in court? What happened next changed everything. For him, for his family, and for the bikers who carried a secret about that boy's past. The rain hit the clubhouse roof like gravel being poured from the sky. Inside, the air smelled of motor oil, leather, and the remnants of pizza someone had ordered hours ago. Mac wiped down the bar while Jax and a few others played cards at a corner table, their laughter cutting through the low hum of classic rock from the jukebox. It was a Tuesday night, quiet, the kind of evening where nobody expected anything more than another round of beers and bad jokes before heading home. Then came the knock. Not loud, not aggressive, just 3 small taps, barely audible over the rain and music. Jax looked up first, frowning. We expecting anyone? Mac shook his head. They weren't. The club didn't get random visitors, especially not at this hour. He walked to the door and pulled it open, ready to tell whoever it was that they had the wrong place. Instead, he found a kid, soaked to the bone, shivering, maybe 13 years old. His sneakers were falling apart. His jeans clung to his skinny legs, and his oversized hoodie dripped water onto the concrete step. But his eyes told the real story, wide, exhausted, holding back tears with everything he had left. Can I? The boy's voice cracked. He swallowed hard and tried again. Can someone please come with me to court? The clubhouse went silent. Even the jukebox seemed to lower its volume. Max stared at the kid, then glanced back at the others. Jax stood up slowly, cards forgotten. Stitch, the club medic, moved closer, his instincts kicking in. Come inside, Max said quietly, stepping aside. You're freezing. The boy hesitated, like he wasn't sure if he was allowed, then stepped in, leaving wet footprints on the floor. Someone grabbed a towel. Another pulled out a chair. The kid sat down stiffly, clutching his backpack like it was the only thing keeping him together. What's your name, son? Mac asked, crouching down to the boy's eye level. Eric. All right, Eric. I'm Mac. This is Jax, Stitch, Razor, and the rest of the crew. Now tell me what's going on. Why do you need someone at court? Eric's hands shook as he unzipped his backpack and pulled out a crumpled stack of papers. He set them on the table, not making eye contact with anyone. Jax picked them up, scanned the first page, and his face changed. Restraining order hearing, Jax said slowly. Against. He stopped mid-sentence, his eyes widening. Against Trent Sullivan. Mac's breath caught. The years fell away in an instant. That name, he hadn't heard it in years, but it hit him like a punch. Trent Sullivan. A brother who used to ride with them, who used to laugh at this very table, who'd spiraled into something dark and dangerous before disappearing from their lives. Trent's your dad? Mac asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Eric nodded, still staring at the floor. Mac stood up, ran a hand through his graying hair, and walked to the window. Rain streaked down the glass. He'd known Trent was trouble. Everyone had. They'd watched him get violent, watched him burn bridges, watched him fall into substances that turned him into someone they didn't recognize. And Mac had done nothing. He'd told himself it wasn't his business, that Trent had to figure it out himself. Now Trent's kid was sitting in their clubhouse, soaking wet and terrified, asking strangers for help. Why us? Stitch asked gently, sitting down across from Eric. Why'd you come here? Eric finally looked up. His eyes were red. My mom. She's got my baby sister. She works 2 jobs. She can't take time off and she can't afford a babysitter. My dad still has custody because of some old court thing, but Eric's voice broke. He hurts me, and Mom's scared he'll hurt my sister too. I didn't know where else to go. I saw the clubhouse and I thought maybe, you thought bikers might understand, Razor said from the back, his voice rough but kind. Eric nodded. Mac turned back around. The guilt wrapped around his chest like wire, but something else burned underneath. Something that wouldn't let him walk away this time. He walked over and sat down next to Eric. When's the hearing? Thursday morning. 10 o'clock. Where's your mom now? Home with my sister. She doesn't know I'm here. She thinks I'm at a friend's house. Mac exchanged looks with the others. Jax gave a single nod. Stitch crossed his arms, jaw set. Razor cracked his knuckles. The decision was made without a word spoken. Eric, Mac said firmly, you came to the right place. We're going to that courthouse with you. All of us. The boy's eyes filled with tears, but this time he let them fall. Really? Really? And we're going to make sure your mom and sister are taken care of too. You're not alone anymore, kid. You hear me? You're not alone. Eric nodded, unable to speak. Stitch handed him a clean towel and a jacket. Jax was already on his phone, making calls. Mac looked at the papers on the table, at Trent's name printed there, at the details of a broken family, at a second chance he never thought he'd get. This was the reckoning he'd avoided for years, delivered to his doorstep by a 13-year-old in soaked sneakers. And this time, Mac wasn't going to fail. By Wednesday morning, the clubhouse had transformed into a war room. Maps, notes, and printed documents covered the main table. Mac had barely slept. He'd spent half the night digging through old records, trying to piece together what Trent had become after leaving the club. What he found turned his stomach. Trent hadn't just disappeared. He'd gotten himself tangled with loan sharks and dealers on the east side. He owed money to people who didn't forgive debts. And according to a contact Mac still had in the police department, Trent had been using his custody of Eric as leverage, threatening Megan that if she pushed for full custody, he'd make sure she never saw either kid again. This is worse than we thought, Jax said, looking over Mac's shoulder at the stack of incident reports. 3 domestic disturbance calls in 2 years, all dropped because Megan was too scared to press charges. He's got her trapped. Not anymore, Mac said quietly. We need 2 teams. Jax, you and Razor keep gathering everything we can use in court, witnesses, documentation, anything that shows he's unfit. I want statements from neighbors, former employers, anyone who's seen what he's really like. What about the rest of us? Stitch asked. Mac looked at him. We go check on Megan and the baby. Eric gave me the address. If half of what that kid said is true, they need help now. An hour later, Mac, Stitch, and 2 other members pulled up to a rundown apartment complex on the south side. Peeling paint, cracked sidewalks, and a parking lot full of potholes. They climbed the stairs to Unit 2C and knocked gently. The door opened a crack, held by a chain lock. A young woman peered out, exhausted eyes going wide when she saw 4 bikers standing there. Megan Sullivan? Mac asked carefully. She didn't answer, just stared. Your son Eric came to see us. We're here to help. Eric? Her voice was hoarse. Is he okay? Where is he? He's safe. He's with a couple of our guys. Can we come in? Just for a minute. Megan hesitated, then closed the door to unhook the chain. When she opened it fully, Mac understood why Eric had looked so desperate. The apartment told the story before Megan could. Water stains bloomed across the ceiling, a bucket catching steady drips in the corner. An infant slept in a playpen by the window. Empty formula cans sat beside a stack of bills marked Final Notice in red. Megan wore scrubs with a coffee stain down the front. She moved like someone carrying twice her weight. I don't understand, she said quietly, wrapping her arms around herself. Why would Eric go to you? Because he's scared, Stitch said gently. And because he's smart enough to know his mom can't fight this battle alone. Her face crumbled. She covered her mouth with her hand, trying not to cry, trying not to wake the baby. I don't have money. I can barely keep the lights on. If CPS finds out, they won't, Mac interrupted. We're not here to judge you. We're here to help. When's the last time you ate? She blinked at the question. Yesterday, I think. Lunch. Stitch swore under his breath and headed for the door. I'll be back in 20 minutes. Mac sat down at the small kitchen table and gestured for Megan to join him. She did slowly, like she wasn't sure this was real. Trent used to ride with us, Mac said. Years ago, before you probably even met him. I watched him fall apart. Told myself he'd figure it out. I was wrong. But I'm not making that mistake again. We're going to that hearing with Eric, and we're going to make sure the judge sees the truth. He'll retaliate, Megan whispered. You don't know what he's like now. He's got friends. Dangerous people. If you make him angry, let him be angry. We've dealt with dangerous before. The baby stirred and started to cry. Megan moved to pick her up, but Max saw her wince as she stood, like her back was hurting, like she'd been on her feet for too many hours. She lifted the infant, a tiny girl with dark curls, and tried to soothe her. When's your next shift? One of the other bikers, Hound, asked. Tonight, 11 to 7. Who watches her? My neighbor sometimes, but she's got her own kids. I figure it out. Hound pulled out his phone. Not anymore. My wife runs a daycare. She'll watch her during your shifts. No charge. Megan stared at him. You don't even know me. We know Eric. That's enough. Stitch returned with bags of groceries, formula, diapers, actual food. He started unpacking without asking permission, filling the empty cabinets and fridge. Megan just stood there holding her daughter, tears streaming down her face. Why are you doing this? Max stood and looked her in the eye. Because it's the right thing to do. And because we should have done it a long time ago. That evening, back at the clubhouse, Mac found Stitch sitting outside with Eric. The kid was holding a wrench, learning how to adjust a carburetor on an old motorcycle Stitch was restoring. Eric's hands weren't shaking anymore. You're a natural, Stitch said. Your old man ever teach you about bikes? Eric's face darkened. He used to. Before. Before what? Before he started drinking. Before he got mean. Stitch set down his tools and looked at the kid. You flinch when doors slam. Your hands shake when someone stands too close. I've seen that look before. Guys coming back from deployment wear it the same way. Eric didn't respond. You know what helps? Stitch continued. Talking about it. Not to everyone. Just to people who'll listen. Eric was quiet for a long moment. Then, barely audible, I'm scared of him. I know. Stitch didn't offer empty reassurances. Fear that deep didn't disappear with a few kind words. But I'm more scared of what he'll do to my mom and sister if I don't stop him. Stitch put a hand on the kid's shoulder. That's why we're here. You're not stopping him alone. We've got your back now. Inside, Mac's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Stay out of this, Mac. He's my son, not yours. Trent knew, and he was watching. Mac deleted the message and looked at the brothers gathered around him. Tomorrow they'd face the past. Tonight, they'd make sure this family had a future worth fighting for. Thursday morning arrived cold and gray. The courthouse steps were slick with morning dew as Megan climbed them with Eric at her side, the baby carrier heavy on her arm. Her hands trembled as she adjusted her daughter's blanket. Eric wore the only dress shirt he owned, borrowed from a neighbor and too big in the shoulders. Then they heard them coming, a low rumble that grew louder, reverberating off the courthouse walls. 12 motorcycles rolled into the courthouse parking lot in formation, their pipes echoing off the stone building. One by one, they parked and dismounted. Mac led them, wearing his cleanest vest. Stitch walked beside him, then Jax, Razor, Hound, and the others. They moved like a unit, purposeful and silent. People stopped and stared. Lawyers with briefcases. Court staff on smoke breaks. Everyone watched as the bikers crossed the lot and climbed the steps. When they reached Megan and Eric, Mac simply nodded. We're here. Eric's eyes glistened. He couldn't speak, but he didn't need to. They entered the courthouse together. Security eyed them warily but let them through. By the time they reached courtroom 3B, a small crowd had gathered in the hallway, whispering and pointing. The bikers ignored them all. Inside, the courtroom was sterile, wood paneling, fluorescent lights, the state seal hanging behind the judge's bench. Megan and Eric sat at the petitioner's table with a legal aid attorney who looked overwhelmed. Behind them, the 12 bikers filed into the gallery, filling 2 entire rows. They sat in absolute silence, hands folded, eyes forward. The bailiff called the court to order. Judge Patricia Hendricks entered, a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes that missed nothing. She surveyed the courtroom, her gaze lingering on the wall of leather vests, then took her seat. "This is a hearing regarding custody modification and a restraining order petition," she said, opening the file. "Where is the respondent?" The doors opened. Trent Sullivan walked in with a lawyer in an expensive suit, someone he clearly couldn't afford on his own, which meant he'd called in favors from the wrong people. Trent looked different than Mac remembered. Thinner, harder. His eyes had gone flat, like someone had scraped out everything that used to live behind them. When Trent saw the bikers, he stopped mid-stride. His face went pale, then flushed red. His eyes found Max across the room, and for a split second, something flickered there. Shame, maybe, or anger. Then it was gone, replaced by a sneer. "Your Honor," Trent's lawyer began smoothly, "I'd like to note the intimidation tactics being employed here. My client's former associates have apparently decided to." "Noted," Judge Hendricks interrupted, unimpressed. "They're sitting quietly. Unless you have an actual objection, we're proceeding. Ms. Sullivan, you're petitioning for full custody and a restraining order." "Why?" Megan stood shakily. Her attorney guided her through the basics, the history of violence, the threats, the fear for her children's safety. Her voice was barely above a whisper. The judge had to ask her to speak up twice. Then it was Eric's turn. The boy walked to the witness stand like he was climbing a gallows. The bailiff swore him in. He sat down, gripping the armrest so hard his knuckles went white. Trent's lawyer stood up, ready to pounce. "Eric, your father loves you, doesn't he?" Eric stared at his lap. "I guess. Speak up, son. Your father provides for you, gives you a home. He hits me." Eric's voice cut through the courtroom like a knife. When he looked up, something had shifted. The fear was still there, but so was something else, defiance. "He hits me when he drinks. He broke my wrist last year and told the ER I fell off my bike. He locks me in my room when he goes out. He told me if I ever told anyone, he'd make sure I never saw my mom or sister again." "Your Honor, the child is clearly being coached." "I'm not finished." Eric's voice grew stronger. From the gallery, Stitch gave him the smallest nod. "I'm scared of him. I've been scared my whole life. But I'm more scared of what happens to my baby sister if someone doesn't stop him. My mom works herself sick trying to take care of us. She skips meals so we can eat. And my dad he just takes and doesn't care who he hurts." Nobody moved. The judge leaned forward, her expression unreadable. "Thank you, Eric. You can step down." As Eric returned to his seat, Megan pulled him close. Her shoulders shook with silent sobs. "I'd like to call a character witness," the legal aid attorney said. "Mac Brennan." Mac stood and walked to the stand, feeling every eye on him. After being sworn in, he looked directly at the judge. "Ma'am, I've known Trent Sullivan for over 15 years. He rode with our club before his life fell apart. I watched him become violent. I watched him drive away everyone who cared about him. And I did nothing." Mac's voice didn't waver, though the weight of those words settled deep in his chest. "I told myself it wasn't my place, that he had to fix himself. I was wrong. I failed him and I failed his family. But I'm not failing them again. Mr. Brennan, why are you here today? Because that boy came to us when he had nowhere else to go. Because his mother is drowning and nobody's thrown her a line. And because sometimes family isn't about blood. It's about who shows up when it matters." Trent's lawyer tried to discredit Mac, implying gang connections and criminal activity. Mac didn't flinch. He answered every question honestly, never breaking eye contact with the judge. When he finished, he walked past Trent's table. Their eyes met across the aisle. Once they'd been brothers. Now they were strangers divided by choices that couldn't be undone. Judge Hendricks reviewed her notes, then addressed the room. "I've heard enough. Custody is awarded to Ms. Sullivan, effective immediately. Mr. Sullivan will have supervised visitation only, pending completion of anger management and substance abuse treatment. The restraining order is granted. This court is adjourned." The gavel came down hard. Megan collapsed into her attorney's arms, sobbing with relief. Eric sat frozen, unable to process what had just happened. The bikers stood as one, a silent honor guard. As they filed out, Trent caught Mac in the hallway. "You destroyed me." Mac turned to face him. "No, brother. You did that yourself. But here's the thing, you can still fix it. Get clean. Do the work. And maybe one day you'll earn your son back. The door's open, but you've got to walk through it yourself." Trent said nothing. He just walked away, disappearing into the crowd. Outside, Eric finally let himself breathe. The weeks after the hearing unfolded quietly, steadily, like water finding level ground. Megan's apartment got a new roof, courtesy of Hound calling in a favor with a contractor friend. The landlord, suddenly motivated after a visit from Jackson Razor, agreed to fix the plumbing and repaint the walls. Nobody asked questions. Stitch's wife, Maria, kept her word about watching the baby. Little Emma became a fixture at the daycare, and Megan finally stopped looking over her shoulder every time she left for work. Color returned to her face. She started standing straighter. But Mac knew the real work was happening quietly, in the margins. Eric started coming to the clubhouse 3 times a week. At first, he just watched Stitch work on bikes, handing him tools, learning the names of parts. Then one afternoon, Stitch handed him a socket wrench and said, "Your turn." The kid's hands trembled when he first gripped the wrench. Old instincts die hard. But Stitch was patient, never raising his voice, always explaining rather than commanding. Slowly, Eric's confidence grew. He learned to strip an engine, rebuild a carburetor, diagnose problems by sound alone. One evening, as they cleaned grease off their hands, Eric finally opened up. "I used to think it was my fault," he said quietly. "Like if I was better, smarter, quieter. Maybe he wouldn't get so angry." Stitch stopped wiping his hands and looked at the boy. "Abuse rewires your brain. Makes you think you earned it somehow. But you didn't cause it, Eric. And you couldn't have stopped it. Your father's demons are his own. Do you think he'll ever change? Honestly, I don't know. Some people do. Some people can't. But that's not your weight to carry anymore." Eric nodded slowly, processing. Then he picked up another wrench and got back to work. At the clubhouse 2 months after the hearing, Mac was going over some paperwork when Jax walked in with news. Trent's enrolled in a program. Court-mandated treatment facility upstate. 30 days inpatient. Mac looked up. He actually went? According to his probation officer. Whether he completes it, Jax shrugged. Time will tell. Mac wanted to believe recovery was possible. But hope without evidence was just wishful thinking. Either way, it wasn't his choice anymore. Trent had to want it for himself. Meanwhile, Megan found new work, better hours, better pay, at a medical office where her nursing assistant certification actually mattered. She started talking about next month, next year. Plans instead of survival. She brought the club a homemade meal one Sunday. Her way of saying thank you when words felt insufficient. "You gave me my life back," she told Mac as they stood outside watching Eric teach Emma how to clap her hands. "All of you. I don't know how to repay that." "You already are," Mac said. "By being the mother those kids need. By not giving up. That's enough." 3 months after the hearing, on a warm Saturday afternoon, Eric showed up at the clubhouse alone. He walked in without hesitation now, greeted the members by name, moved through the space like he belonged. Mac was at the bar when Eric approached, holding something behind his back. "I made something," the kid said, suddenly shy. He pulled out a small wooden box, handcrafted and sanded smooth. On the lid, he'd burned an image, a motorcycle and the club's initials. Mac took it carefully, running his fingers over the craftsmanship. "You made this. Stitch taught me woodworking last month. I wanted to say thank you for everything." Mac felt his throat tighten. He set the box down and looked at Eric, really looked at him. The terrified kid who'd shown up in the rain was still there somewhere, but he'd grown around that fear, built something solid over it. "Come with me," Mac said. He led Eric to the back room where they kept club memorabilia, old photos, retired vests, patches from members who'd passed on. Mac opened a drawer and pulled out a small leather patch. It read, "Honorary Little Brother." "This doesn't make you a member," Mac explained. "You're too young for that, and you've got a whole life ahead of you. But it means you're family. It means you've got brothers who'll stand with you, no matter what. You earned this, not because of what you went through, but because of what you did with it after." Eric took the patch with trembling hands. His eyes filled with tears, but he was smiling. "Can I put it on my backpack? It's yours. Do whatever feels right." Later that evening, as the sun set orange and gold over the lot, the club gathered outside. Someone started a fire in the barrel. Music played low. Eric sat between Stitch and Jax, holding Emma while Megan talked with Maria about starting night classes. Max stood apart, watching the scene with quiet satisfaction. In the far corner of the lot sat Trent's old motorcycle, still covered by the same tarp from years ago. Mac kept it there, not as a shrine but as a question mark. Some doors stayed open. Some people never walked back through. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Finished the program. 30 days clean. Don't know what comes next." Max stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back, "One day at a time. The door's still open when you're ready." He pocketed the phone and walked back to the fire. Eric looked up and grinned, and in that moment, Mac knew they'd done something right. They hadn't just protected a kid, they'd helped him heal. They'd helped a family find solid ground. Sometimes that was all anyone could ask for. This story reminds us that family isn't always about blood. It's about who shows up when you need them most. What would you have done in Mac's place? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If this story moved you, hit that like button, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to embrace the journey for more powerful stories like this one. Thanks for riding with us. See you in our next video.